The one that I've seen where it doesn't work very well is you've got a central hub of centers of excellence that say what the standards are, and then you delegate the execution of those standards to the local business units that then interpret them in their own means. That's really more for business strategy, I'd say, not for something, definitely not for finance. You don't let functions determine, what is under GAAP accounting standards. We're like, no, Central runs that. And, scheduling is one of these things where it depends really what you're doing, where you can draw that line.
It's okay. Scottie Pippen, give it the ball to Jordan. We got this. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah Piippo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager for Intel.
And my name's Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
On today's episode, we are going to dive into program and portfolio analysis. Greg and I have been thinking about and discussing this topic greatly, and we're going to have a meandering conversation wherever we want to go on this topic. So, Greg, how about you start off by giving me the PMI definition for program and portfolio analysis? Is a program a collection of projects, or is a portfolio a collection of projects? Does a portfolio align to the business? I'm just kidding. We're not going there, folks. Why don't you kick us off and talk about what's on the top of your mind?
Right. Well, I'll start with two things. Number one, genuinely for the people listening, okay, what's the difference between a project, program, and portfolio? The actual definitions are in the PMI or the APM documentation. But essentially, a program is a collection of projects that have interdependencies between them. A portfolio is a range of projects that may or may not have interconnections between them. And obviously, you can have programs in portfolios, or you can not. If all of your projects are not related, you'll have a lot of projects, no programs, blah, blah, blah. So those are just some definitions.
That's something we're going to need to dive into, because when you say not related, immediately my brain goes to, if you are out there constructing facilities, buildings, they, at a certain point on the operations side, are all related. What sort of processes you bring to the table is going to be very related. We'll dive into that later, because I think that's going to immediately get into the weeds. So bring us back up.
I'll bring back. So specifically the conversation, I've been talking with a lot of SVPs of project controls, project management, scheduling, CTOs, that kind of thing. So I'm going to anchor this conversation on what it is that planning and scheduling leaders do at that level of an organization and what they care about on a day-to-day basis. And the thing they do revolves around four themes. It's people, processes, systematization, and tools. And ultimately, these senior people are responsible for making sure that proper planning, scheduling, cost management gets done. To do that, you need to hire and train the right people. You need to have the right governance processes in place. The systematization is the automation of governance processes with respect to the people. So it's having governance processes in there that you can't get around. And a perfect example is requesting time off for holiday. Yes, you can just not turn up to work, but to do it, you don't want to do that. You have to go into some kind of system and request a holiday, and then someone approves. So that's systematization. And then the fourth is tools. So tools are essentially the productivity enhancing technologies that you equip the people with to do the processes, etc. And I think what's really interesting at this level, and I'll stop here, is that the conversation I've been having splits into twofold. One is the fundamental elements of those. So what are the standards, the processes, the governance reports, the notifications, the tool sets, these kinds of things. And then the second is, okay, now I've got all that in place, what analytics do I need to pull? A super simple one is things like, are all my schedules built using the same coding structure? If you think about this, if you're sitting in a head office somewhere in the world and you've got 200 people around the world doing that, except for phoning up all 200 people every single month and seeing their schedule and checking it yourself, how do you actually make sure that, one, people are using your coding structures, and two, that ones that aren't are being flagged to you? And I think that gets into a very interesting conversation.
Finally, Greg has talked about something that I'm actually salivating over and deal with on a regular basis. And I know anyone who's scheduled more than one project or overseen more than one project has faced the same, sort of issues on the coding. But I think coding is just an example of literally just about everything that's going to happen when you start expanding to that program and portfolio level. I would like to focus more on the portfolio level where, and I hope I don't get the definitions already wrong, those are the projects that seemingly don't have any direct connections. Did I get that right?
Not quite. What I'm saying is it's one of these tangential.
A
program is a collection of interconnected projects.
Yes,
but a portfolio
so that's like a large.
Is just a.
Yes, I want to focus on the portfolio.
Yeah, a portfolio can either be a bunch of programs or it can be a bunch of projects. A portfolio is just a massive group of projects. They could be related or not related. Yeah. You're the CEO of $1 billion organization. It's just all the projects you're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, because where I'm going with this is like, okay, you're building this like massive facility and it has all these sub projects are in it and they're all connected together and tied together, right? Yeah. I think that's one thing. And I think we've talked about that before. You can go check out the other episodes. What I want to get into is, you have 30, 40, 50 projects around the globe that are all, you're not actually relying on the supply chain for one to deliver the other. They're not all interactually connected. That's where I would like to focus this on, because to me, that's where the coding issue is actually, and these issues we're talking about are actually harder because you're dealing with a wide group of different people and you have less control over what's actually happening. And why that happens is because you can sit there and be like, well, Micah, if you wrote your specification and did this and did that and you contractually mandated it. But anyone who's lived in the real world long enough knows that you can write whatever you want, but then you actually have to have people physically checking every single one of those codes if those codes are integral part. And that goes for anything. When I think about that portfolio, I immediately go to how are you structuring your planning and scheduling organization to begin with? Because you have two options here. And there's obviously variations in between. Option one, you have a very strong, large central team, the hub, if you will, and then you have smaller satellite teams, or you have strong satellite teams and a smaller central team. And those I've seen both deployed, but I think how you think about strategically setting up that organization is going to then trickle down into how you execute those requirements like coding and all those other things.
Yeah, I think I've seen those two and everything in between, and the most common one. This what I'm about to explain is a structure that actually exists in both of those extremes. What you have is your corporate. Well, yeah, I'm going to explain it, and then there's a second structure. You've got let's say your SVP of project management or project controls, and then what you have are VPs. So you'll have maybe a geographic segmentation. So you've got North America, Europe, Asia, whatever, or you've got an industry segmentation. So oil and gas, manufacturing, energy, that kind of thing. And that SVP can make it the accountability or the responsibility of those managers to do. And then the SVP can hold centers of excellence. The one that I've seen where it doesn't work very well is you've got a central hub of centers of excellence that say what the standards are, and then you delegate the execution of those standards to the local business units that then interpret them in their own means. That's really more for business strategy, I'd say, not for something, definitely not for finance. You don't let functions determine what is under GAAP accounting standards. We're like, no, Central runs that. And, scheduling is one of these things where it depends really what you're doing, where you can draw that line. The other thing I'd like to mention as well is why all this matters when you get to the top. And I don't think that many people actually know the business model of portfolios. The question is, why do large companies exist in project management? Why is it not just a group of small projects? Now, you might say, well, it's the economies of scale. I can take resources when one project finishes and put it to the other, and you're correct. That is an advantage. But the big reason that central treasuries or central portfolios exist, let's say in construction land, is because they can insure projects. So when you're bidding, I'm talking contractors here, but when you're bidding for a whole host of work with some very senior clients, they will require underwriting of some form or what's known as surety arrangements. And surety arrangements are financial guarantees that the company provides via a third party, normally a independent surety or an insurance provider like Lloyd's of London, that will underwrite performance. So if the company takes the cash and just walks away and goes nothing, the surety provider actually compensates back the client, and then the surety provider sues the contractor and goes after their bank accounts and things. When you have a large portfolio of projects, you can essentially insure those projects across the patch with a head office cost. And it's the law of averages. So you might have 50 projects. You expect 49 to go well and 1 to go wrong. You don't know which one it is, so you just charge the all 50 a premium, and it kind of pans out. If you think about it that way, an insurance provider is all about minimizing risk whilst maximizing upside, which is not spending the money. This is why at the portfolio level, standards are so important, because if you don't have standards across the organization, there isn't a solid floor to stand on for you modeling insurance. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't actually understand that that's actually the big driver of these things. Because to your point, like, you could say, well, the standards for something in the Midwest are different than the standards in Europe. Yeah, but there's still a concrete floor that you can't go below. If you're trying to do $1 billion project and you've got no schedule, I'd probably say that you're probably below the standard there, and I'd say that that's a massive flag for the insurance.
If we were doing advertisements, we should just roll to like Jake from State Farm ad. The people in America will know what I'm talking about.
Don't you have some like gecko or something like that over there?
Yeah, we got a lot. We got get your insurance, folks. Well, let's get a little tactical here and go into a little bit more on the portfolio program side. Take that coding example and maybe kind of get into the weeds a bit on different sorts of tactics, right? So what, I guess, would you think, or what would you put at the have to haves on portfolio management when you're looking specifically at requirements, right? Like, and let's just focus it on schedule, and let's just kind of walk through what are some of those and brainstorm what some of those are.
Okay. So in my mind, there's 5 or 6 of these. I'm just going to spit them off the head. I'll probably forget. Sorry, listeners. I'll probably forget some of them.
I'm here to help you.
Number 1, you have to have an approvals process.
When you say approvals, what do you mean?
What I mean by that is there has to be
this project's going to be like 12 months. Do you approve it? And then all the other sorts of things like it?
Yes. What I mean is a scheduler can't just create a schedule and then give it to a client and that's the contract. There has to be an approvals process that goes, senior schedules, project management, commercial, finance, all of these, and everyone has to sign off. And it's essentially all the leads that are responsible for all of the resources that are either underpinning or that. Now, you might think that, how's that tactical? It's tactical because scheduling has to lead that. If you create a schedule, you can't just create a schedule and there it goes. You have to socialize it. So that's number 1. Number 2, something you've mentioned, coding. Now, coding, we can have an argument at what level, but most organizations, they have their top 10 milestones that is in every project start, project finish, are 2 of them. They have to have them in there because that is what's reported to the board. Because you'll have all of these projects and they go
weather tight. Yeah. Now,
there you go.
Is the shell weather tight with cardboard doors on or real doors? Let the regional team decide back there. But anyway, so milestones. Okay,
you got your 10 miles. You have your coding on that. Now, you can, as people really understand AI and they really understand the benchmarking and the forecasting potential, people are now driving that down to much lower levels, so like level 2s or level 3s I've seen.
My question on that is, will the technology, has it surpassed or will it surpass standardization? For the last 5 years, I've been shoving down my throat, oh, you have to have clean data, you have to have organized data, you have to have it coded, you have to have it match your design bid package and your this package and that. Are we going to cross a point where we don't necessarily have to have it so standardized?
Yeah, just so I can't give an exact explanation, but from what I've seen, like the algorithms we use can quite easily read and like understand actual words and combinations of words, and they can understand complex linkages within data that actually give the machine a context. That's not to say that if you're creating data which literally doesn't reflect reality, so it's like, I thought we were building a chip fab and you've put launch rocket. It's just literally west of, it's just a different, then
How
it's
do
going
you
to get
think
confused.
the chips are going to be delivered on the
Yeah.
rocket? Okay. Well, I want to stay on the portfolio thing. I don't want to take us on too many tangents because that's where my brain goes.
Well,
but you
okay,
have the
on that.
activity coding, activity standards. I would say
Well, so
that's important.
we've got approvals processes, we've got standards. What you also have, change processes. Change management is definitely a corporate initiative. The same as delay analysis, and when I'm talking here, when you're getting into forensics, and it could be legal of some kind, they'll have guidance documents on those. You'll also have reporting standards, and these you'll have probably varying reported standards for clients, but you'll have consistent internal reporting standards. The board will need the least amount of information, and the business unit will be in need a bit more, and then the product, but it'll be somewhat consistent in a pyramid. You'll also have generally lessons learned processes at the end of a project and close down processes.
That's that spreadsheet that just has like the 1,000 random things that what project picks up and is like,
I'm
hey,
not
by the way,
saying that
did you read the lessons learned document?
Yeah, I'm not saying they've been done well, but if you think, like, if I just top level, like, when you create the program, you create a schedule, it has to have some code, you have to get it signed up. Cool. You have to report on it and you have to do your monthly cycle. Okay, that'll have it. When things change, you need to understand that. When things are delayed, you need to understand that. And then at the end, you need to close down in a specific way. And companies have their own lessons learned one. That's the least developed, generally, in my sense. That, in my experience, is kind of the box of this portfolio. But then at the portfolio level, you'll have management intervention. So at any point, you'll have like, how many projects are we doing? How many of them are in the red? How many of them are in amber? How many are in green? Therefore, what's our risk profile and what's our exposure? This kind of stuff. So one element is the processes. The other is the analytics.
The analytics, to me, is a very interesting conversation because I think there's a framework that I'm thinking about on portfolios that mentally I've been shifting to over the last couple of years that I don't see necessarily in the industry, in the writing, in quite a few things, where I am now looking at the portfolio strictly in terms of how can I make this easier for the next person to come? And when you look at maybe like that lessons learned document, what would be actually something that's easy for someone to pick up and do? Lessons learned are a piece of knowledge that are tied to a specific context. So, hey, by the way, we screwed up ordering steel because we didn't know that the steel roll dates happened on a certain cadence, right? And so we waited too long and we missed that cadence. So that's the context of it. But that's only relevant at a certain point in time, And so if I was going to make it easier for the next person to come along, I would want to serve that information up to them when it's most necessary and most relevant. So
beautiful question. Beautiful.
For example, like it would be, as we're going through we're laying out the procurement things, this is when it's actually being served to me. And it's not, and then it kind of gets into varying degrees of like how much help you're giving. help could be, is it a reminder? Is it a, you should, definitely do this, or you have to do this type of deal? And that's where, to me, portfolio analysis, like, take that framework for the full thing. And I just don't see it, and I don't see people attacking it from that angle either.
Well, let's actually start. So that's what I'd call a level 3 position, like in maturity. A level 1 maturity position is I actually can just enforce standards. A level 0 is I have standards, but who knows who's following them, and processes. Level 1 is I can actually check, like I can actually see who's following them. Level 2 is I can kind of pull all of that together and understand where the portfolio is at. 50% of my projects late. Okay, well, I know that kind of stuff. And then a level 3 is I can start to take one project and make the next project better for me at a portfolio level. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing that, but what I've seen is new roles being, it's not really new, it's been developed over 20 years. It's learning management. I forget their exact name, but
make sure, Greg, that you share all those learnings.
Well, it's people who. So let me actually put it in context. Let me just outright say what I can see is doable right today. So the problem of sharing lessons learned is threefold. One, capturing them in the first place. Number 2 is understanding their context so you know when to serve it up. And number 3 is being in the location when the person needs that knowledge. Now, this is for what I'd call contextual knowledge. For systemic knowledge, that has to get its way into a process of some kind. So, if the knowledge is so critical that it applies to every single project, the way you execute that is you amend processes to include it. This is normally where big sign-offs come in.
You put up bumpers so people can't go, they just physically cannot go outside the bumper.
And I'll give you an example. Let's say you're running a financial system and you only have one approval for $1 million of spend, and someone runs off with $1 million. You'll go, maybe it's a bad idea to have one approval. Now we have 2. You don't stop people spending $1 million. You go, actually, there's a bumper in the way, and the chances of 2 people being fraudulent are less.
Yeah, and this is what's wild, where this gets into be a bit of a paradox on portfolios, where you start there. You had system-based, and then what was the other one you called it?
So one is contextual, and the other is systematic. Systematic means it applies to everything.
So people start applying systematic solutions to contextual knowledge. And you see this a lot on long-standing big portfolios, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, where you hire people that are smart to go solve problems. And they think, if I just create a process, it will solve it. And then you have an overwhelming sort of process that isn't actually solving the contextual issue anymore. It's just bureaucracy. It's just process on process on process. That's the one that you start seeing. And that's one where you almost want to just nuke the system, clear it all out, and then start over from scratch. But no one wants to do that.
Well, here's the thing that we can do today. So, for example, what I would do is, as projects are going through, not at the end, as projects are going through, maybe once every month, I would pull all of the people into a room for 5 minutes each and interview them. What is one thing that happened that was a problem that you didn't see? What's something that went really well? That kind of thing. You can have AI transcribe all of that. You can put it through generative models. You can say, summarize to me all the lessons learnt this month. You can pull things that you think are systematic, which then go off for additional analysis, because it's only systematic if every single project sees it. It's not systematic if only 1 or 2 see it, or they're exposed to it. And then you and I know that you can easily create models where they can serve up contextual instance. And the process, by the way, can be as simple as once a month, you need to ask this AI, is there any lessons that it can share with you based on the scope you're doing that month? That can be the process. It's as simple as that. And you just type in, I'm doing welding. Are there any lessons learned that I should know? Yes, here are 7 lessons that you need to know.
Don't let
Cool.
Greg and Micah ever have a welding machine.
One of them lost an
There's
eye.
the one rule, or one other thing that I thought about was that when I coach my kids' soccer team and football, if you will, for people listening around, the game where you kick the ball into the net. Don't want to offend anybody. When I'm coaching my son's team, and in either side gets up a lot, the coach will say, "Hey, before you score a goal, you have to pass the ball 2 times." So that way they just don't run down and score. And I'm wondering if you set up a rule that says for any sort of project specific check that you create. So for example, let's say you create a performance against duration metric for your project and a report, right? If you create one of those, you also have to create, here's your second pass, how will this help the project downstream? And so either you've built that metric so the project downstream can actually use it, because how many times have someone built a metric or built something and it's a single use? The next team comes in, it's like, how do I set this up? Oh, well, you just got to do this thing for like 3 months and you got to do a contract. So I think that could be another thing that you just instill in the culture of your program. Make that second pass. Whatever you're creating on this project, if you create one, you have to then explain and define and improve that next project downstream. I think that could really get a culture of, hey, we're thinking about this as a portfolio, not as a project.
You're right. What you'd have to be very careful of there is that the process that you impose to do that is very simple and repetitive. So, if you're essentially, what I'd call that is the process of creation. So if you create something, when you've created it, you have to do a 1-minute video explaining what it is, why it's valuable, and how you can use it later on. And it's just something as simple as that, because to embed that kind of large-scale behavioral change, you need simple instruction, like pass the ball twice. And you also need some kind of police. Now, if the kids
police,
don't pass the ball twice, you go.
Yeah, well, I'd say someone to catch the ball too. Like someone to like, and I think that you're calling it police, but I mean, really, what I just realized we're banging on Toyota invented this 40 years ago with the Kaizen method, right? That's all we're explaining now.
Well,
in new terms,
in really high level terms. But what I see is that coming full circle, I think this is a fascinating topic because organizations have never had the cloud or AI before. So organizations have only had military governance, which is top-down, bureaucratic, enforced through sign-off processes.
And that
they've
scales
never had
linearly,
emergent governance.
Right? Yeah, that's a linear scale. Like I have 5 processes. I need 5 people. The more process you add, the more people you add. One other thing that just came to mind, I don't know why I'm so creative and this morning on just the wild things, is I'd almost want to look when people go through and map out their processes or do processes, just to put some funny number to it that says like, hey, every time we create a process, it costs $1. It's almost like, and just to like set out how much it costs. So that way, when people go to create processes or systems, you have some sort of measuring of like, is this worth it? And my favorite one is stage gates. So if you go into any portfolio, we got to have stage gates. We have to have stage gates. Like if we don't have this information, we're not going to go approve for it. And it's one of those ones where I feel like if you added up the dollars it's costing and the value, like you just wouldn't do stage gates. Like there wouldn't actually be that robust of an approval process to go through with it. And I know that sounds controversial, but I think a lot of times, and maybe it's just because I'm used to dealing with more mature programs, that they do have that dollar value. And where I'm going with this is when you bring in AI, those dollars start to go down, like on the process side. But if you're not really kind of tracking where you're at overall in the dollars, I just feel like there's situations where you may just end up taking this great technology and then just adding more bureaucracy to it.
Well, I think this actually comes down to the flavor of management within each organization. And my personal flavor of management is that management is a productivity multiplier, whereas individual contribution is a productivity additional. So, for example, if I have a team of 5 people and they produce 5 units of work, I hire an individual contributor, I've got 6 units of work. If I hire a manager, they need to work on the objectives, the people, the processes, the systematization, and the tools, plus integration with other departments, to the tune of each person has to increase their productivity by 20%. Otherwise, I might as well just hire an individual contributor.
Here's the wild
And
thing. Replace the word people with process, and I feel the exact same thing that we're talking about on portfolio side.
yes, and actually this is it's just that normally people at that level are very, very senior, so there's less scrutiny to what they're doing. But I will actually give a counter to something you just said around the stage gates. A lot of the process in big organizations is incredibly inefficient 99% of the time, and then it's incredibly efficient for 1%, but the 1% it catches as a company ender. And it's there to stop the nuclear button happening. So,
for sure.
It's there to stop someone signing a contract where they get paid 100 million, but it's going to cost the business 2 billion. In that situation, that might only happen once every 10 years. If you think, you're going to lose basically 2 billion on that, I'd rather have 50 million of people wasting their time than that risk. So
exactly.
But
that's
to your
totally
point,
fair point.
You're completely correct in that what AI and cloud essentially enable people to do now is they reduce the cost of governance by over 100 times because it can be automated. And actually, in the venture world, this is called GaaS. So, you've got SaaS, software as a service. GaaS is governance as a service.
Yeah. It's huge.
And this, I think, is
it's going to be huge
interesting
going forward.
Yeah. I think it is. I actually think the future of project management is GaaS systems that actually help people. So it's like, hey, there's an approval process coming up. I've already pre-written all the documents for it. Can you just check them for me? It's not asking you, do you want to do the process? It's done it, and it's asking if you want to check. Like those
think about this hypothetical for a bit. You have a program that delivers multi-billion-dollar projects. You have to think about how much review actually happens to maintain a strong stage gate process. Now, I know the oil and gas folks out there, they have a robust process on their side, and it's been developed over hundreds of years. Totally get it, but even to maintain that, they have to be spending loads of money of people just reviewing other people's work. So when you say the GaaS systems, to me, that is, I drop my schedule into a folder. It's already doing the checks. The approvals are happening offline, not in meetings, wasting people's times. And then people are going through it and checking it. And that, kind of older school stage gate process is going away. And then you're getting optimizations out of it by being able to track some of the data that comes out of those GaaS processes. And that to me is where, and I think for people who are listening on the call who may be like, man, Greg and Micah are in that rocket ship flying around Mars right now. I got pieces of paper and Primavera P6. If you start looking at, if you're part of a company, they are a portfolio of projects. Where can you find angles in to start helping out future projects? That is going to demonstrate immediate impact and be a boost to your career. And they're easy to find. And whether you want to do it with a high level technology solution or something that is a little bit more, there's nothing wrong with not applying technology, just doing something standard. Definitely attack those angles that you see, because you're just going to learn so much, and then you're going to have some leadership opportunities tied to them. So I'd highly recommend people go explore some of these topics we brought up across this podcast.
I agree, and I'd bring it round and say the conversation we've had today is the conversation that the SVPs have. So when you go into a room, fundamentally, there's elements of forecasting and integrated business planning that they do, but a lot of it is standards, people, processes, governance, which is reporting on standards and people, analytics, and systematization. because it's thinking, how do I take what a thing that works well and make it into many things that work very well? And just considering that is already advancing your thinking of scheduling and tactics.
Completely agree. Well, I think we both slammed out those final thoughts pretty well. Shall we just awkwardly hit the leave button and just disappear into the smoke like Batman?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go.
Well, hey,
barbecue.
Folks, if you like this portfolio discussion, we're happy to have more of them. If you're looking for other tips, tricks, and tactics, please just reach out to us. I mean, we're here to help. We would love to shoot episodes or bring guests on to dive into the topics that you want to see. So if there's something that is just scratching at your brain that you'd love to hear about, feel free to reach out to us and we'll try and make that happen. So for us on Beyond Deadlines, hit the subscribe button. Please do us a favor. I think I looked at like 60% of people who come and watch these videos aren't subscribers. So will you help us out and hit the subscribe button? We can just do so much more as this channel grows, and we'd love to keep helping you out and supporting you on your planning and scheduling journeys. And with that, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.